Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker with Maverick Multimedia and Maverick News. This is ongoing coverage of Freedom Convoy 2022, and I'm here with my handsome co-host, Mr.
Brendan Kennedy, the host of the Flow of Discourse podcast. Hey, Rick, how are you today?
Excellent, my friend. Given the circumstances, I guess. Given that Canada tonight is not the Canada we have ever known before and is a Canada that is essentially under martial law.
Big time. So now we've had so much time to reflect over the events of last night. If people out there have missed it, the House of Commons did vote a number, something like 185 to 150 some, in favor of the Emergencies Act, or quote-unquote the War Measures Act in Canada. Now that you've had some time to reflect on it, what do you have any different thoughts on it since then? I've talked to a few people, and they've reflected a little bit differently on it, and there's like, well, where do we go from here? That's what I'm hearing a lot of.
My views haven't changed on it much. My only observation, I think, that is different from yesterday, Brendan, is I still don't think people understand the seriousness of this. And I think it's because we've been like the frog boiling slowly in a pot of water. And if you talked about this even a year ago or 2 years ago, people would have said, oh, no, that won't happen. That's, you're just a conspiracy theorist. We'll never get to that point just because there's a virus out there. But that's where we are now. And I've been concerned about it for quite a while. But my point is, even when I listen to people who are opposed to it, there seems to be a lack of urgency in their voice. Even on the media side, there are a few people, like I listened to Viva Fry today. He seemed very, very concerned about it, as I am. Others seem to be, I just don't think they understand that this gives Justin Trudeau dictatorial powers. This gives the government tyrannical powers, true tyrannical powers. They can target people, pull them off the street. There is no rule of law. Our government is lawless now. And that's because they are literally, and I don't say this lightly, they're on a war footing. And what they're engaging in now is a Nazi hunt for Nazis that don't exist. So they've created Nazis out of truckers. And they're trying to create, I think, a sort of a race war, some bizarre fabricated enemy that they can fight. It's a bizarre situation.
I think now that you've said that, I think now is as good a time as any. So this clip just started circulating, and it's from our House of Commons here. And so I just pulled it up. But it goes to show your point where they're trying to create basically Nazis out of the blue-collar working-class people.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the link ready to go.
Okay, let's punch that up.
How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we have to see of honk honk, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler, do we need to see by these protesters on social media?
And well, there you have it. Honk honk is code word for Hail Hitler. This is an exact example of what Rick was talking about. Like, this is not something we're making up by a long shot.
I've thought of this before, and you know, I need to be careful how I phrase this because I want to be accurate and create a picture for people that is understandable and not distorted. But I think that a big part of this is the NDP, the Liberals, people on the extreme left in particular, are playing a very, very dangerous political game here by playing to immigrants, new Canadians in particular, and playing a very dangerous game of where they're inflaming racial tensions. They're trying to score political points and get people to vote for them by creating a racial divide that really doesn't exist. And here's what I mean by this. And I don't think Canadians who are maybe born here, like myself, right? I was born here. I've always lived in Canada. And I think most people in my situation don't understand this. But if you're a new Canadian and you've come here maybe, or you've only lived here half your life, or maybe even only for a few years, and you hear a politician talking about all the white racists, your perspective is much different. They're using fear to control you, if that's the message you're getting. And I think if you haven't grown up here, your perspective on race relations is probably a lot different because you're coming from a different part of the world, and where maybe there is less tolerance, where maybe there is a lot more racism. And when in Canada, though, Canada has been and has evolved into one of the most welcoming, probably the most welcoming, least racist countries in the world. And so for people who have lived here for a long time, I think they understand that. And so they're, of course, opposed to racism. So when politicians talk about racism and Nazis, they're like, well, yeah, everybody's against Nazis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a trucker, a middle-class worker, I think you're taken aback, you're insulted and surprised when someone's calling you a racist Nazi, because you're not. But a politician who wants to score cheap political points throws a line out like that because they can target a new Canadian who isn't familiar with Canadian history as much, doesn't have the perspective of having lived here for a long time, maybe hasn't experienced enough of Canada and enough different aspects of Canadian culture and Canadian people to understand how welcoming the country is and how welcoming and kind Canadians are, and may feel intimidated now and fearful of even trying to approach or talk to other people in their community because they have a politician telling them that they're surrounded by a bunch of racist Nazis, when in fact the guy living next door, who might have a different skin color, might be the friendliest guy in the world and the most tolerant. But if you have some politician pumping crap into your head, telling you that all these people around you are a bunch of racists and fascists, you see, so I think that's largely what's going on. They're scoring cheap political points at the expense of an entire group of people, an entire class of people, and that's white, working class, and even like not even just white working class. It's it's directed a lot at white working class people from these politicians, but it's also that they'll take people of other ethnicities and other skin colors and kind of group them in as well, right? And call them racist if they get associated with them,
Oh yeah,
this group,
it's
right?
it's like, well, Candace Owens, for example, right? Like people call her racist all the time,
Right.
and
Exactly what I'm talking about.
and she's like a strong black woman, right? And like that's good on her. I mean, she's very good at speaking and bringing points for her community. Like I truly appreciate where she comes from, and I think she has a lot of value to what she adds for sure. You're right, though. The identity politics game has been in full swing, definitely in the 2010s more than anything, and it's basically been something that Justin Trudeau's cabinet has centered on since he got in. Like he brought that to the forefront when he put together his first government cabinet, and he was like, "Oh, I made my cabinet half men and half women because it's 2016 or something like that." So it sounds like it's a good thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing because it's something that should be brought on merit. Like you're not going to take somebody who is not like a scientist to be the Minister of Environment. So if somebody worked at a Wendy's all their life, and then you bring them on and say, okay, well, you're going to be the Minister of Environment. We have this other guy who's more capable of the job, but I need a woman to fill this slot, and so you're gonna have to be it. So although the other person might be more qualified, they're playing an identity politics game, and we know that Justin Trudeau, what he really thinks about minorities and working with people of color and that sort of thing, because I mean you just have to look at Jody Wilson-Raybould and several other situations that have occurred over the years to really know how he feels and what he thinks. He doesn't care. It's a his way or the highway type of situation all the time.
Yeah. So tonight we have a government that has invoked and has now extended for 30 days, unless the Senate fails to rubber stamp it. But now we have a government that is out of control, and they are out there hunting Nazis that, in my opinion, don't exist, because they're really just hunting working class truckers with an opposing political view. And what they've done is they've managed to twist the truth, create a narrative, and start and in some cases redefine words using mass media in order to justify this bizarre witch hunt, which is a hunt for Nazi truckers and frankly Nazi farmers. That and they're really playing, especially when you look at Jagmeet Singh and Trudeau and that member of parliament who just sat there and said honk honk now means Heil Hitler.
I have some update on that. So that woman's name is Yaira Sachs.
Yeah.
She is the member for parliament in York Centre, so she's Toronto based.
Which is exactly one of the areas where they're, injecting this narrative in order to try and score cheap political points with a demographic that they know will respond to their fear-mongering.
So it also says here she earned an undergraduate degree from McGill University in Political Science and Middle East Studies, a master's degree from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in International Relations and Diplomacy, and is the mother of 2 teenage daughters. So
it's really disgusting, I think, because now more than ever, we need to bring Canadians together, Canadians from all walks of life. And we do see that happening. But when you have politicians using this kind of language, they're just pushing buttons to get an emotional response and inject fear into people. And they're doing it by playing this sort of a twisted race card in order to, as I say, score cheap political points with people who have a particular kind of Well, they just know how to push those buttons to get that response out of a certain demographic.
Yeah.
They do polling. They know sort of what people's worldview is when they come here, their political slants, their experiences from other countries, and everybody looks at the world a little bit differently. So when you come here from, if you came here from New Zealand, or if you came here from Holland, or if you came here from India, your perspective on everything is going to be different, and you're going to view Canada a little bit differently depending on where you're from and how long you've been here. And I view the country differently because I've lived here all my life. And honestly, my perspective is a lot different because I live in a smaller town. I don't live in like the GTA. And so when I go up to the GTA, it's a much different experience for me than it is when I'm back in my hometown because the demographics are a lot different. So the point is, that's largely what they're doing. Justin Trudeau has now been able to tighten his grip on these new powers that he has through all of this, and yeah, I think it's just really disgusting, and it's terrible because they're demonizing again, basically working class people, truckers, farmers, others who have been supporting them, and driving a wedge between people, and it's dangerous. It's really, really dangerous because they're throwing fuel on fear and using these emotions that they're creating in people to get political results at the expense of harmony, a good relationship, harmonious communities where people can come together and live peacefully, right? And without fear, and get to know each other and appreciate each other for what everyone has to offer, what everyone brings. They talk about diversity, but in reality, when the only thing that matters to you is race, you're a racist.
You know what I found very interesting is this member for parliament who says the equivalent of saying honk honk is to essentially say, I don't think it bears worth repeating, but to say, Heil Hitler or whatever, for her to have a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy and to stand up in one of the most sacred institutions in our land and say that about people. There's a difference between trolling and throwing in whatever evil ideological scheme you might be thinking going on in there. There's nothing diplomatic about that.
I don't know if I would call Parliament a sacred institution. There's been a
supposed
lot of
to
crap thrown around there.
There is a lot of crap going on around there, but it is supposed to be the sacred institution of the land. Like it's supposed to be important, and they have disheveled it, and like that type of language happens in Parliament Hill all the time.
It's the only place you can slander someone and get away with it without being sued.
Yeah, basically. But what's diplomatic about that? There's nothing diplomatic about that. Somebody went to school just for that to be.
That's what I mean. It's absolutely intentional.
Yeah.
What they're doing, and now it's even more dangerous. Look at what they're doing. Justin Trudeau has created this artificial fake emergency out of a completely peaceful protest. His bought and paid for media is spinning this web of lies, has been from the very beginning, to paint this whole protest as some dangerous insurrection. And we ran video here again last night contrasting the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa versus other protests that were actually violent in Canada, in like Montreal in the past, where nothing much was ever done about it, where buildings were burned, cop cars set on fire, windows smashed, stores looted. None of that went on in Ottawa. None of that. And it's an artificial emergency that Justin Trudeau is using for political purposes, to target his political enemies and to give himself unprecedented dictatorial powers. That's how much power he has. Canada no longer exists. We have no rights, no freedoms. It's no longer a free country. And I don't think it will be again for a long time, because he's not going to let go of these powers easily. If you think that this is only going to go on for 30 days, think again. Even the interim chief of police in Ottawa stood there and said that their hunt for these truckers will go on for months. And all Justin Trudeau has to do to keep these powers is to just keep some sort of an emergency going in the minds of people. And if you can throw out insults, call a whole segment of society, Nazis, demonize them as subhuman, the unvaccinated, unclean, Nazi fascist truckers and farmers, demonize them, target them, victimize them, go after them, and then pursue them using these powers, hunt them all down one by one in order to freeze their bank accounts, take their assets, take their trucks, crush them, crush your political opponents. And in the process, you're doing, a few things. You're cementing political support among a certain demographic, because you have them fearful, thinking that the country is full of Nazis and there's a Nazi around every other corner. And you're crushing political opponents that you've identified, people that you don't think are going to vote for you and are opposing your rise in power and this reign of terror that you're inflicting upon the people using the Emergencies Act or the War Measures Act. So this is going to go on for a long time. All he has to do is say, well, there's still some Nazis out there. We're going to have to, go out and catch these guys. And Trudeau doesn't use the term Nazi all the time, nor does even Jagmeet Singh, but they bring it up and inject it just enough to inject that fear, right?
Well,
but they don't say it enough.
It's not just Nazi. It's interchangeable with other things like white
Right.
supremacist and yada yada. They have like 5 or 6 different terms that they use to inject just that fear you're talking about.
And you're right, like and then redefining words so that it then becomes like a catchphrase for the people that they have most fearful, where honk honk now it means something different. So because honk honk has been a term that I think it was even started by some news commentators in the U.S. actually, because there was the honkening. I think it was Tim Pool. I think he was one of the first ones to sort of use the honkening because of all the horn honking in Ottawa. That's where it came from. It's the horn honking. They were sending a message to Justin Trudeau, hey, get out here and talk to us. Right?
Yeah, they made a T-shirt even. They had this woman. She used to live in ex-communist China, or she used to live in communist China, and she's running now for the Republican Party in the States. And they were like, "Oh, we should make a honk honk type of T-shirt," and she goes, "Oh, make it free honk honk," and it's like free Hong Kong, but free honk honk. It was pretty good tie on words. I thought pretty good.
And now we've seen the CBC trying to redefine the word freedom, where they're trying to say that freedom is a word that far-right extremists are using, fascists, because freedom can mean different things to different people, and it's now a word that has been hijacked by the far-right extremists and the fascists. Freedom. So now freedom even is a dirty word, and so if you're in that demographic where they're, trying to inject this fear. Now, anytime you hear anyone say, oh, they're the Freedom Convoy, well, that's the fascist convoy. Oh, the freedom fighters, oh, they're the fascists. If you use the word freedom, it means now something different in your head. And it's very Orwellian. It's doublespeak. And it's very dangerous what they're doing. It's a great big weird mind, the screwing with people's minds. Freedom means freedom. That's what freedom means. And honk means honk. That's what it means. If you're trying to if you think it means something else, it's only because you've been listening to these word wizards and taking in their new spin on this in order to scare the living crap out of you. Freedom means freedom. That's what it means. And these truckers are not Nazis, okay? They're not. They're working class, middle class, hardworking people who are fed up with medical mandates and a government that is far overreached. And they've injected themselves into everybody's lives, and now they've turned the country into a tyrannical dictatorship run by the worst prime minister the country has ever seen, who doesn't deserve to be there, who doesn't listen to the people, who doesn't represent the people at all, and has done nothing but spew hate for over 2 years, and has divided people, driven a wedge between people, and should be removed from office at the earliest opportunity, at the earliest, using the first political opportunity to do it. He does not deserve to be there. And yes, blackface Trudeau has ruined himself on the world stage. No question about it. No question about it. Other world leaders are calling him a tyrant. We have a clip queued up. We're going to run for you in a minute, showing exactly that. He has very little respect around the world
now. What do you think the lifespan on Trudeau is here? Do you think we're going to have 4 years of this?
I'm not optimistic, Brendan. Something like this, last night's vote gave him a new lease on life. I predicted that his political days were numbered early on during the Freedom Convoy when it rolled into town because of the way he was speaking and the way he was dividing people. But he has strategically positioned himself in a way now that he has the support of Parliament. We're not going to get an election anytime soon, and now he has these additional powers. And yeah, I think he's entrenched in there again, and has turned a crisis into an extension for his term in office. So even though he has a minority government, he's there for at least another year and a half or 2 years, I would say. I
think it's going to be. I still think his days are numbered because I don't know what he could possibly do between now and the election and how many years it's going to be. I don't think he could save himself. I mean, he is based in power from politics from 6 months ago, right? He's not based in power from politics from right now. And that's where we're kind of at with that. Where is it going to go? I don't know. I don't think that there'll be anything that can redeem him. And I think there's things coming up soon enough that people are going to all determine that they've had enough of him. And I hope that's correct, but it would have to take something real awful special to redeem himself now. I don't think he could.
Ultimately, it's hard to. I think it will be hard for him to hold on to power. This is going to cost him everything politically in the end.
Oh,
but
time.
Right now, people are afraid of him. All the liberals are afraid of him. He's ruling through fear. Always has. In fact, I was reading an article from back in 2016 in the Huffington Post last night. An old article that said Justin Trudeau rules the Liberal Party like a dictator and will turn Canada into a dictatorship. That was back in 2016 if he's elected to office. And of course, that's what we're seeing here tonight. That was the editorial from back then. And he is ruling through fear. He rules everything through fear. And even the Conservatives are afraid of him. That's why they're so timid in the House of Commons. He now has so much power that if he deems you to be an opponent, all he has to do is say, that person said something about liking the truckers. So, hey, Joe Cop or Joe Military Guy, I want you, or CSIS or whoever, I want you to go investigate that person because they put something on Facebook where they said, go truckers. So you better freeze their bank account or just go over there and hassle them or make their life miserable. That's what they're doing. It's a great big giant witch hunt for Nazis. And what's a Nazi? It's anybody Justin Trudeau decides is a Nazi or a fascist or a racist. He doesn't use the word Nazi all the time because, again, people who have been, who maybe grew up in Canada and are tolerant, welcoming, they don't get it. It's kind of like Nazi, nobody's in favor of being a Nazi, but yeah, actually, you're the Nazi. You're the person he's singling out. He just doesn't say it enough for you to realize it, but he says it enough in just the right circumstances to get that message into the right communities to push the buttons of those people in a particular demographic to get the support that he wants in that regard. And the NDP does a lot of that dirty work for him.
Big
frankly.
time. They're in lockstep together. Like they love each other. During the election, I seen pictures where somebody photoshopped Jagmeet Singh's wife, her face into Justin Trudeau's face, and so Justin Trudeau came out looking very pregnant and lovely, and they were embracing each other in love. And I think that speaks to their relationship that they have, because even before the election we just had, the NDP and the Liberals were pushing everything through constantly and nonstop.
Yeah, GH says stop saying Trudeau's mandates. It's not Trudeau's mandates. It's the WEF mandates. And I understand what that means. And yeah, I think there is a larger agenda here. And Trudeau is not acting in the best interests of Canadians and is implementing an agenda here to turn Canada into the world's first post-nation state.
It's
and
happening.
I think we're there. Christine Lowe says very few trucks on the highways today. I wasn't out enough to really know, but I am curious about the impact that call for a general strike and a truckers strike, what impact that might have had today, how many truckers might have stayed home. There just, at this point, really is no way to know because the mainstream legacy media, they're not reporting on it at all. And we're just not, there's no way to get enough information back to know how many truckers didn't go to work today. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up that clip.
Speaking of which, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, where we talked about, well, how much of the working population would it take for a strike to be effective? And oddly enough, I came across an article today, and the banks are freezing people's accounts when they want to try and withdraw all their money.
Yep.
So apparently a very small amount of people who are able to pull out all of their money is causing them quite a bit of panic.
Yeah, and I've got more to say about that too, but let's listen to this
Yep, bring it up.
message, I guess. It was a call from truckers to initiate a strike, and this went out over the weekend, and it's getting out. More and more people are hearing it. And in fact, I'm going to have to recue this, I think, again. Brendan, this clip keeps freezing up. Let me just pull it off. I'll recue, and we'll do it again. So yeah, it's
it will be something hard. Well, I guess we'll know how successful it was when...
Therefore, we're asking that beginning February 21, 2022, no one go to work until the mandates are lifted and Justin Trudeau resigns or is removed as leader of the party by his party. Asking that Justin Trudeau be removed as leader of his party is not an attempt to overthrow the government. but a reasonable petition to members of Parliament to use the lawful powers imbued to them by their office to remove someone from leadership who is clearly no longer serving the interests of Canadians. Therefore, make whatever arrangements you need to make for as long as you need to make them to stay at home from work. We recommend to everyone that they stock up on supplies and be prepared for protracted shortages of goods. We also ask that you forward this message to everyone in your network on every platform available to you, not only so that they can stand, but also so they can prepare. As well, we ask you to call your member of Parliament and demand that they call their Liberal and Conservative and NDP counterparts in Parliament to ensure an end to the mandates and the revocation of the invocation of the Emergencies Act. If you're a member of Parliament, a provincial legislator, or the Premier of a province, and you've received this message, it is also time for you to get a backbone. The Canadian people have watched you flip-flop on your position so many times, it is difficult to believe you have any integrity left, and we're sick of it. It's time to prove you have a measure of backbone remaining. So take a principled stand and admit that nothing you've attempted to implement to deal with COVID has worked. Masks haven't worked. Distancing hasn't worked. Quarantines haven't worked. And the vaccines aren't working. And you know it. In fact, the data shows that huge numbers of vaccinated people are now extremely sick, and they're rightly pissed off. Many of them feel completely duped and actually comprise a large number of the protest groups now amassing. So to reiterate the essence of this message, first, a huge thank you to the many truckers and their families in Ottawa who have risked their livelihoods, their time, their talent, and their treasure for the benefit of all Canadians. In solidarity and out of respect for their commitment to stand for Canadians, we therefore ask that beginning February 21, 2022, all Canadian truckers and American truckers hauling to Canada, you park your rakes. And to the rest of Canadians, stand with them by refusing to go to work until the mandates are lifted. The invocation of the Emergencies Act is revoked, and Justin Trudeau is no longer the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. If you're seeing this video after February 21st, just join in. Share this on every platform available to you with as many people as you can, and buckle up. Their homes, freedom, and livelihood. And it is completely unacceptable that Canadians cheering what they are doing reap the benefit of their courage without also sharing in their sacrifice. Therefore, we're asking that beginning February 21, 2022, no one go to work until the mandates are lifted and Justin Trudeau resigns or is removed as leader of the party by his party. Asking that Justin Trudeau be removed as leader of his party is not an attempt to overthrow the government.
It's just looping now.
Yep. So it loops and loops and loops. Yep. So that's what, the truckers, some trucker, his face is blurred out, obviously, because he's petrified, scared, knows that Justin Trudeau and his goons will target him and come after him. So yeah, they're becoming a little more stealthy, I guess, in what they're doing.
I don't know how effective it will be, and I don't think we will know until the mainstream media comes out and says white supremacists are not going to work in support of the freedom movement. So when you see that, that's when you'll know it done something. But otherwise, you won't know anything. Like it.
Yeah, I think they're intentionally ignoring it because they don't want that message to get out. So it's like, just don't even talk about it. Don't talk about it. It'll be a problem if people find out. Well, it is happening, and I know that there has been some impact. We just saw a comment from someone saying that they noticed far fewer trucks on the road today. I didn't see any yesterday, but it was a holiday. But it's hard to know.
Yeah, is that a causation or a correlation? Yesterday was a holiday in Ontario, as you. So there was all around less traffic in the city where I worked yesterday. Nobody really went to work at all because it was a holiday, except for retail and that sort of thing. But I don't know. It's to be determined. Like I said, once the news media comes out and spins it, then we'll know exactly what is happening with it.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, I've been seeing videos like this one where it looks like trucks are gathering somewhere. The locations apparently are secret. One of the locations apparently was exposed by Global News overnight. But it looks like truckers are trying to regroup in some places, but I don't even know if, how much, I don't know how much credibility this stuff has. We just don't know, because
Is that a picture or is it a video?
it's video. I'm going to let this roll.
Okay.
So this is, I think it's a farm someplace, and I mean, I just don't know where it is. And it's presented as
There's a lot of us here.
newer trucks, like a newer video within, like, say, the last 24 hours, like from last night. But
It's really tough. It's really pretty hard to tell in the dark, guys. But there are a lot of people here. Global News gave out our location, which shame on them. But this is Freedomville. A lot of the cars are dark right now, but there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of us here. Lots of trucks, lots of positive vibes. And so, yeah, so a little bit of an update, I guess. We were doxed off by Global News. They said where we were. They found us with a drone or some bullshit. But I guess instead of an Emergency Measures Act at first, at 8 o'clock tonight, looks like they're gearing up to do a non-confidence vote for Mr. Trudeau. So, he could be out of reign of terror as soon as tonight. He could be gone, guys. So let's pray for that. Let's keep on keeping on. Hold that line, guys. If he gets gone, no matter what comes out in the wash, guys, don't get focused. Don't get caught up on the who takes over, what that, we'll figure it out. The main thing is Trudeau gets gone, and we do it democratically. We do it the right way. We've done it lawfully. We've held that line. I'm so proud of all of you guys for staying nonviolent and peaceful, and just with love in your hearts, and the world's watching us, guys. Let's get this done. If he doesn't get out, then we're in the reeds, right? So, but we're in it together, and I wouldn't be anywhere else, guys. I love you.
so I don't know. That was last night, just before the vote in Parliament.
Yep. Last night for sure.
I don't know. I don't know. Impeach, that's more of a U.S. thing. It's not really a thing here.
No. I think all we do is votes of no confidence, right?
Yeah, so he's just entrenched now. The next step is the Senate. The Senate has started to debate this. The Senate is the house of sober second thought. Normally, legislation is passed and it gets rubber stamped over at the Senate. This is a much more serious matter, so they will debate it. The debate is expected to go on for probably at least a couple more days. Could have gone on till Friday, but I'm hearing that they are scheduled to vote on it probably Thursday. So we'll see what happens there. It is possible that the Senate could reject this extension of the Emergencies Act or War Measures Act, and all eyes are on that now. Very difficult to know where this is going, and it's hard to know what's going on with this call for a truckers' strike and a general strike across the country. They tried to put this together, and I did hear them talking about it in a news conference at the tail end of a video when the convoy was still in place in Ottawa. And they started to talk about it, but even then I realized they're not really getting the word out. It's not, that sort of thing isn't something you can just put together quickly. But what might happen is it might start to get traction and gain momentum over the next number of days. We just don't know. The thing is, that whole convoy took the entire country by surprise and was much larger, much more successful than anyone ever thought that it could be or would be. Nobody saw that thing coming. So anything could happen with this effort to organize some sort of a strike. And I'll tell you this, I think the harder the government pushes and the more lives they destroy, I think it ultimately is going to have the opposite effect of what they want. Justin Trudeau might think that he's crushing his political opponents by confiscating their trucks, seizing them, auctioning them off and keeping the revenue from them, which is also what the mayor of Ottawa wants to do. He might think that he's crushing his opponents by seizing their bank accounts, taking their money, making it impossible for them to make a living, destroying their businesses and destroying their lives, and putting the truckers and their families out on the street by, honestly, the hundreds of them. I think they're just going to piss people off and probably piss them off and scare them to the point where they feel like they're backed into a corner, and they're going to become even more politically active. And I think you're going to see more protests over time if he keeps trying to keep his boot on the necks of the truckers and the middle class, the working class, the farmers, and other workers out there who are sick and tired of his authoritarian mandates.
Big time. It's like I've said before about freedom, man. The tighter you try to grip hold on it, the more it slips away. You can't hold it down. It's like nailing down wind. You can't do it. Can't be done.
I don't know. I mean, China has done it.
Yeah, but
a lot of countries have done it.
China was already that way. That's not a good comparison. In fact, there isn't any modern Western country that has gone into such tyranny, I don't think. I mean, I'm probably wrong about that in some way, but China would not be a good example about that because they had huge amounts of turmoil and huge amounts of...
Cuba?
Yeah, Cuba would probably be more accurate, I would say. But yeah, all of those nations, though, had major conflicts of some kinds that made them that way. So, I mean, I don't think we'd be getting into that.
I think, Brendan, they didn't have to fire a shot. All they had to do was go out and beat the truckers with sticks, and now we're there. That's the point. We're here in Canada. We're there. We're here. Canada is now a dictatorship. People just don't realize it. You think your money's safe? Anybody's money? Not just truckers.
I don't think
anybody's money. There's no the banks are no longer safe for your money. If you own a company, your company's no longer safe. If you've spent your life building some sort of a business, it's no longer safe. If the government wants to take it, they'll just take it. They've shown that that's what they are willing and able to do. They want your money, they want your assets, they'll just take it. And that's what they've done. And that's what people also don't understand. Justin Trudeau stands up there and, using doublespeak, says he's protecting people's rights by invoking the Emergencies Act. But by invoking the Emergencies Act, he's taking away all of your rights. Like, quite literally, he's taking away all of your rights. Because he now can use the military, he can do end runs around the charter, he doesn't have to adhere to the Constitution. You know, due process in law is thrown out the window. If he wants to have someone arrested off the street, he just says, go get that guy over there, and they just go pick him up. Look at what's going on in Ottawa tonight, what's been going on there over the weekend. They right now, that city is under hard lockdown. Over 100 checkpoints set up around the city, and the truckers are all gone. But if you want to get into the downtown area, you have to show identification, show your papers, prove who you are. If you're staying at a hotel down there, they're asking you a million questions that are completely unlawful, but because of this Emergencies Act, they're just acting like they can do whatever they want, ask for anything they want, deny access to areas of the city to anyone they want. This is a tyrannical government. It doesn't get much worse. These measures have not been implemented in other cities to that degree, but they can be at the drop of a hat now. It's not restricted to just Ottawa. And we've seen it in other countries where in Venezuela they just nationalized the oil industry. Oh, that's it. We're just going to take it. And when you start doing that, foreign investment dries right up. Who's going to invest in a country where the government has given itself the power to just simply confiscate private property? They have no respect for private property or private property rights. They don't exist anymore. Essentially, that's what they're saying. And what people don't understand is these new financial tools, that they call them tools, but like with FinTrack and the tracking mechanisms, and by making sure the banks can't be held liable if they freeze bank accounts, that there's no legal recourse for people, no legal ramifications. These things are going to, they've said, Chrystia Freeland said that these tools are going to remain in place permanently. And they're rules that are being brought in under the Emergencies Act. But those aspects of it, those financial tools available to law enforcement and government, are going to remain in place permanently. So your money is no longer safe in a Canadian bank. If they decide they don't like you, if you don't behave, if you're not a good boy or a good girl, you can have everything you've ever worked for taken away from you. Your bank account, your house, your truck, your car, whatever the heck they want. And they'll do it using these tools. And there's no recourse. In fact, even right now, they've been asked, how does someone get their bank account unfrozen? And there really has been no clear answer. You can't. Chrystia Freeland says, well, if you want your bank account unfrozen, stop being part of the convoy and just don't participate in it anymore, and then call the police. But the police don't unfreeze your bank account. The bank has to unfreeze the bank account, and there's no actual real process in place for someone to get their life back. They don't care about giving people their lives back. All they want to do is destroy people. This is a terrible thing. It's wrong. It's ethically wrong, morally wrong, legally. I don't think it's proper at all. It's lawless. And it's all aimed at destroying people's lives. That's what they want to do. That's what they are doing tonight. They're targeting people and they're destroying their lives in much the same way, in an even worse way, with the COVID mandates and you must get the injection or you lose your job. They didn't care if they destroyed people's lives. When people were losing their jobs because they had a myriad of reasons why, maybe they couldn't get the shot or didn't want the shot or were opposed to getting it, so they quit their jobs or were fired. They didn't care if people were losing their houses, getting kicked out on the streets. It didn't care what impact that might have on a family and the children of these people who lost their jobs. They just didn't care.
We're not forcing you. We're not forcing you. You have a choice.
Yeah, it's coercion. It was a terrible thing. It is a terrible thing. It's horrific. And people are like, yeah, right on. You make them get the facts. It's shot. Yeah. Because
you have a choice.
Because they're doing this screwing with people's minds. It's sickening. They've made people mentally ill. Twisted people's heads. It's cruel what they've done. They're hurting people and they're taking joy in it. Justin Trudeau is sadistic. Look what he's been doing to people. And these premiers who have gone along with it, Doug Ford in Ontario, the Premier of Ontario, he's a sadistic, you know what, too.
Well, and he was voted in to oppose Justin Trudeau, or I think Justin Trudeau getting elected was a big part of how he was voted in, because he did have a very successful campaign.
It's so bad that even when that elderly woman and that other gentleman got trampled by the horses, I see people cheering that on. Well, we saw the
including
cop,
the RCMP,
right? The cops like laughing about it, mocking the poor old lady who was used as the walker, who got knocked to the ground and trampled by those horses. She ended up with a broken collarbone or injured shoulder. Terrible. And radio hosts, AM 800 radio, Windsor, Ontario. Dan McDonald. I think he's the morning guy there. He's on Twitter. And he's laughing at this woman, saying, if you screw around with horses, you get a horse's ass in your face. Tip, don't mess with horses. And there were other ones too. There was another radio guy, Mike Kirkuk, I think the guy's name is. He's laughing at her too. What kind of sick people laugh at another human being when they've been trampled by a horse? What kind of people? What's wrong with their heads, Brendan? What's happened to these people?
You know,
They're
the
cruel.
easiest way to flip that. You know, the easiest way to flip that, and is always like, what if that was their mother or their grandmother?
Yeah,
Would it
they're
be funny?
dehumanizing
Would it be
these
funny
people.
then? They're dehumanizing them, and it is absolutely sick. It's probably, this is what's wrong with our country, is that Justin Trudeau has created this wedge amongst people. He created a fear. Like,
Terrible, terrible, terrible. And I actually
the moment the government gets out of the freedom movement people's lives is the moment that all of this goes away. I guarantee you, any money. All these people who have probably never even committed themselves to political activism in their entire lives, the moment that the government goes away out of their lives is the day that you would never probably ever hear a chirp out of them ever again. Like, it's that simple. Like, it's insane.
As the Amelia Malloy says, she's taken all of her money out of her account. And I've spoken to other people who've taken their money out of the bank accounts as well. There has been a little bit of a run on the banks, no question about it. And I can certainly understand why. Your money's not safe in there, folks. And the government is so tyrannical that they're even talking about there's been discussion about banning cryptocurrency, and these measures also give the government the power to seize cryptocurrencies as well. So they're going after everything, and they're giving themselves the power to do it. They have it now. They have it tonight for at least the next 30 days, and I predict that it will go on much longer than 30 days.
Well, actually, I had thoughts about that because I've seen some articles about it, and I probably should have mentioned this last night. I think that they'll be able to control some cryptocurrency, but a lot of cryptocurrency is out of government reach.
Supposedly, but even in Ontario,
you could buy like every drug on the black market with cryptocurrency on the deep web.
Yeah, but see, even in Ontario, Binance is now banned. It's a cryptocurrency exchange. I was using it. I was buying crypto on there, and the Ontario's Securities Commission decided that they could no longer do business in Ontario for a variety of reasons. And so back December 30th, all the accounts had to be closed and money withdrawn. So now you're not allowed to buy or sell crypto if you live in Ontario on Binance. And if the government, we've seen other countries like China, they have controls on cryptocurrency. And here in Canada, if they want to, they can just outlaw it. And then if you get caught doing it, I don't know what the penalties would be. They'll make up the penalties, I guess. And if it's digital, if they get the right digital information and the codes or whatever, they can get into these exchanges. They can ban the use of the exchanges. They can do a lot of things. They have a lot of tools. Don't kid yourself. They can get rid of this stuff. Now, if you put it on a wallet where theoretically they can't get at it, even if you get online and they see that you're transacting online somehow and they're monitoring what you're doing, and the government has sophisticated tools to see what you're doing on the internet, they'll hunt you down. They've got nothing better to do these days, it seems anyway, except hunt down people they don't like. So that's what they're talking.
Speaking about hunting down people that they don't like, I don't want this story to get away from us, because today was the day that Tamara Lich was supposed to have her bail hearing day, and there's some interesting stories about that. So I'm not sure how you wanted to attack this. If you just wanted to use like a media source, like I already have an article up, if you want to use it, or I could just give you the short notes on.
Well, just let us know what happened with her, because I think she was denied, right?
Yeah, so Tamara Lich, one of the main convoy protest organizers, was denied bail. Tamara Lich, one of the leading organizers behind the protests, denied bail. So, Ontario Court Justice Julie Burgoyne said in the decision that the effect on the community from the actions of the convoy were immense, and that she felt Litch was obstinate and disingenuous in her responses to the court during her bail hearing on Saturday. I cannot be reassured that if I release you into the community that you will not reoffend. Your detention is necessary for the protection and safety of the public.
Yeah. See, I would characterize her as a political prisoner at this point. All of them are.
That's exactly what she is. And, you know, I did a little bit of digging, too. And I found that this Ontario Court judge has ties with the Liberal Party. And she even tried to get into the Liberal Party, but was not voted in. I do have a video lined up here of Justin Trudeau providing this judge an endorsement. If you feel it's good.
Sure.
All right.
And while Brendan cues that up, if you can support our journalism, you can go to freedomreporters.com. Freedomreporters.com. There's also a hot link in the YouTube description and on the Facebook pages. We have been sending, we've got people out in the field. Carla Olson spent the better part of a month in Ottawa, observing, shooting video, recording, doing interviews, sending back reports, and doing live streams from the nation's capital throughout the freedom protest up there. As we've been trying to provide a counterbalance to the propaganda that is now being distributed by the legacy media. My former employer, CTV, Global, CBC, all of the usual suspects, and we're here fighting the information war, but we can't do it without your help. We are going to expand our coverage, expand this news operation, and to do that, we're going to need some help to help cover some of these expenses. And you can help us out by going to freedomreporters.com. And are you ready there, Brendan, with this clip?
Yeah, are you ready?
Here we go.
All right.
It's an extraordinary pleasure for me to tell you how much I have great admiration for Julie Bourgeois. Her vision, her authenticity, her strength is going to be an amazing asset both to the people of Glengarry, Prescott, Russell, but also to everyone in the House of Commons after the next elections, when I will have hopefully the honor of sitting beside her in the House. Thank you very much.
So what's that about? I don't understand.
So he's endorsing Julie Bourgeois, who is the Ontario Court judge who denied Tamara Litch bail. So Justin Trudeau declares Tamara Litch a political enemy of the state. The judge gets the case at her desk, and then she, in turn, what are the chances, goes around and endorses Justin Trudeau's thought on it, that she is a
So
quote,
she's
unquote,
so.
your detention is necessary for the protection and safety of the public.
Yeah.
I've known people who have murdered. Well, I haven't known murderers, but I've known people who have been murdered, and the murderer got out in bail with nothing like that. This is somebody who is not killed anybody, who has been upset with how things have been in our country for all this time, and then goes and protests against it, and now she's a political prisoner.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
I've seen in some instances, like CBC was posted that she's probably going to spend a lot of time in prison.
I expect so. And as I said before, you combine the Emergencies Act, which is the War Measures Act, with the new hate speech legislation, that is in place, censorship laws, and you allow the government to target these truckers that they characterize as racist, fascist Nazis, and you're going to see a very dangerous precedent set in the courts where they're going to be throwing people in jail who are basically political enemies, and they're going to persecute them and keep them in jail for a long time using these new powers and these new laws. And I believe that they will be unjustly punished and inaccurately accused of crimes that they are not really guilty of. And I think we have a government tonight that is lawless, that is out of control, and is abusing its powers that they're not really lawfully theirs, because they've come about them in an unlawful manner, in a manner that is unconstitutional.
Now, me and you have probably watched every single press conference that Tamara Lich has taken part in. I would say she has always been the calmest of all the organizers. Like, she's very calm in how she speaks. She's not saying for anybody to do anything violent. She hasn't said anything inflammatory to people. As far as I can recall, it's hard to imagine why.
No, I haven't seen anything like that from her at all.
Like, it's hard to imagine how the court can justify this decision, and this could be terrible in the long run. Like, this is not good. This is what we're telling you, people. There's nothing that makes you any different than Tamara Lich or me or you, Rick Walker.
Yep.
They could say that about anybody. And we very clearly have laid out the evidence through our career on this little show that we do here over the past several weeks, that there's somebody who is not violent, who has not done anything illegal, so to speak, and the judge is basically naming them an enemy of the state. I think that's what, if you read between the lines on what the judge says, your detention is necessary for the protection and safety of the public. That, if you read between the lines, you are an enemy of the state.
Yes, and tonight people are living in fear. And one of the reasons is doxing. And what you're looking at here is a Google map of the province of Ontario, Canada. And the Give, Send, Go donor list for the truckers, for the trucking convoy, which was hacked, has now been converted into a Google map so that all the donors can be found on this map. And the information was obtained illegally, but is being distributed all over the place. I'm not going to zoom in close enough for you to see any names here because I don't think that's right. But I am going to illustrate. I'm going to show you this. The government better think about what it's doing, because that's a lot of people. Look at this. Look at all the overlap there. And this is just in Ontario. Now, that's not just one person, one of those markers, okay? There are markers on markers on markers on markers, stacked, 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 stacked. But they're distributing this because these far left fascistic communists are vicious. And they're going after people, and they're distributing this information because these political activists, people like Justin Trudeau and all of his minions, are out there hunting these people. And if you're on a list, people are now afraid that they're going to be targeted by radical and sometimes violent left-wing extremists. And it's happening already.
Yeah.
And more than that, targeted by government, targeted by police. People are afraid they're going to have their bank accounts frozen if they're on this list, if they're on this map. So now all these, if you're a crazy left-wing violent extremist and you want to go target somebody, this is the map that's being distributed to all of them. This is what they're doing. Who's the violent one? Chrystia Freeland said this week that in her news conference when they invoked the Emergencies Act, or I guess it was probably last week now. Last week. She said that, I can't remember what day it was. Anyway, she said
It was February 14th.
Yeah, so she said that by using these tools, it's allowing them to take action peacefully. I submit to you, there's nothing peaceful about freezing someone's bank accounts and making it impossible for them to live. It's actually a very aggressive move. It's very aggressive. It's punitive. It's grossly unfair. It's grossly disproportionate to what people were doing down there protesting. It's not ethical. It's immoral. And what they're doing here, they're all, you know what, Brendan? Here's a good one. You know what? They're all in it together on the left. They're all in it together, whether it's people like Dan McDonald doing his part to mock people who are run over and trampled by horses, or whether it's some Antifa operative out there assaulting someone at a protest and being disruptive, or whether it's some guy as a plant carrying a Confederate flag in the middle of an otherwise completely peaceful protest, or whether it's Justin Trudeau giving himself the power to go after people and hunt people down in a vindictive, don't get mad, get even scenario where he gets to be the ultimate dictator and tyrant of Canada. They're all in it together because they're all doing their part and they're all working in harmony. And it's just like a little jazz ensemble where they get to hunt down the people they don't like because they're in power right now and they're sending a message to everyone. Don't even think about opposing us, because if you do, we will crush you. But I've got news for them. This is Canada. And look at all those dots. You see that? There's a lot of people out there, good people. That's a lot of Canadians. And they're not Nazis.
And here's another thing too. These are all voters too.
That's right. They're all voters.
How many of those people voted for the Liberal Party who aren't going to vote for them anymore?
So, you know what? These politicians, they better start to think twice. They really need to think about this. They're not hunting Nazis. They're hunting Canadians. They are targeting hardworking, tolerant, loving Canadians who stood at the side of the highway waving Canadian flags, singing the national anthem, cheering on truckers who were delivering hope. Hope that we might finally be able to get our lives back to normal and get the government off our backs. Instead, they're hunting these people tonight. This is what Justin Trudeau is doing. This is what they've done. The government is at war with its own people. Justin Trudeau is doing his part, and the people who hacked that account and are now illegally distributing the personal information of these convoy donors who made donations in good faith at a time when it was perfectly legal to do so. Now they've turned it, and they were doing it out of national pride and hope. And now we're all living in fear. Everyone, me, you, every person that's got a dot on that map. Millions of Canadians tonight living in fear. And that's also why I know people personally who are right now packing and getting ready to leave Canada because they no longer believe in the country and they know that it has been lost. All that we can do now is try to find some peaceful political way to get the country back. It's appalling. Any further thoughts about that?
I'm just totally disgusted with how people have taken that information and just ran with it. We've seen plenty of instances where people have donated to either Justin Trudeau's foundation or the Pierre Trudeau Foundation. Is that what it is? People have donated to that, and they were Chinese government employees. There's been lots of terrible things that people have voted or have paid money into, and nobody ever bats an eye. But people have donated to this cause or have felt compelled under their patriotic duty or whatever to do so, and that's awesome. But the way we've turned on these people is sick, and how the media fuels it, and how they're all ganging up on just regular people. Like, I've heard this, there's a story about a single mother who donated, I think, like $10 or something, and her account ended up getting frozen, and she's like a minimum wage worker. That's terrible. You're absolutely right, and people should not think so little of this, that by the banks having the power to go into your account and freeze it, that is too much. That is too much.
It's way too much. The government shouldn't be allowed to do that, and certainly not for something like this.
And especially not with stolen information. If they're using stolen information to determine this, then that's absolutely disgusting.
But you see, they're justifying it because they're characterizing these truckers as domestic terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
And we showed people raw video for over 3 weeks from the scene, perfectly peaceful. They're not terrorists. They're Canadian citizens who took their frustrations directly to the doorstep of the Prime Minister on Parliament Hill, which is entirely appropriate. Was it a large protest? Yeah, you bet your boots it was. Because, why? Because the mandates are unprecedented. Because the measures the government has taken have been very authoritarian. And it's time for them to be lifted. And that's what the message is. But the government just isn't listening because Trudeau isn't listening. So they stayed there for a long time. Why? Because Trudeau wouldn't come out to talk to them. And they tried every other political means. It's been tried for 2 years. We've seen little protests here, medium-sized protests there, large protests in Toronto, in other large cities like Edmonton, all over Canada. Protests and protests and protests. And the government just doesn't listen. But protesting is part of the process. It's part of the democratic process. And sometimes it's disruptive. That's also part of the protest. And there's no more appropriate place to do it than in the nation's capital. Now, you might have a hardline police chief or a hardline interim police chief who's willing to do the bidding of the Prime Minister, who wants his political opponents crushed. But the reality is, these were just Canadians exercising their God-given rights to protest. Their rights to protest and free speech and free expression. And Justin Trudeau has crushed all of that. He's taken all of that away, not just from them, but from you. He's saying you still have the right to free speech, but that's only if he says it's okay. If he decides that you don't, you just don't now. If you protest the wrong thing, they'll move in and arrest you. If you say the wrong thing, he'll move in and arrest you. He'll have you arrested.
Well, I thought it was worth commending. There was some very brave souls. If you go into what I just put into the share box there.
So what are we looking at here?
This is Jagmeet Singh's office in Burnaby, British Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
And these are his constituents lined outside to protest his decision to support the Emergencies Act in Canada. And there you have it. And some of these signs say Jack Layton would vote no. Tommy Douglas is rolling in his grave. Jagmeet is Trudeau's lapdog. I thought this was worth sharing. That this is a reflection that Jagmeet Singh has been in office for some time. He's been a career politician for some time. He's been an NDP advocate for some time. I'm sure this region in Burnaby, BC has probably been NDP for a very long time. This goes to show you that what they had done in Parliament last night is not reflective of what the NDP is supposed to be or who they were. Like, whatever it is now, it's absolutely, like, I don't know. It's almost as if they should just be scrapped and tried with treason. That's, like, what I think.
Well, the NDP is not what it was. The New Democrats used to represent the working class. That was where their base of support was. And the Conservatives were viewed as the party of big business and conservative economic policies. And the Liberals were supposed to be somewhere in between, representing a little of this and a little of that and more in the middle, but maybe kind of leaning more to the left and more socialistic. But the NDP further to the left even than that. And they got most of their support from labor unions and, you know, auto workers and just the working class people, right? And even truck drivers, especially people like truck drivers and the Teamsters unions, right? Well, not anymore. Not anymore. Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats today, they obviously don't care about truckers. They don't care about the right to, strike. They don't care about your rights to demonstrate, which is what the NDP was really always all about.
Oh, they do care about that, but only if it's for communism.
Well, right. Exactly right. But not for just the regular working class guy, not anymore.
No.
And so they've lost that entire base. And a lot of the people in that demographic are now kind of searching for some place to park their support. And it's spread out all over the place. And a lot of it has gone even over to the Conservatives and to the PPC. So it's been a kind of a strange thing. A lot of the NDP support, strangely, has gone from the NDP over to the PPC. And the PPC started really by a bunch of homeless conservatives. But it's the civil liberties issues that are creating unity over there in that party, which now seems to spread across the political spectrum with support coming from all different parties. So the political landscape is being redrawn. Jagmeet Singh, he's a disaster. That's why him and he's also supporting Trudeau. That's why the NDP props up the Liberals. They don't have enough support to form government on their own, but by propping up a minority Liberal government and propping up Trudeau, they get a lot of power because Trudeau will give them what they want in order to have that support. And it's a completely different ballgame politically now. Canada is not what it was. The political landscape is not what it was.
No, it is not. And some of those statements were echoed on this show last night before the vote was done. Tommy Douglas wouldn't be in agreement with this. Jack Layton wouldn't be in agreement with this. But this is just a party that has run amok and has gone way too far. And, you know, we can show people a glimpse of that. I mean, I do have his Twitter thing pulled up, his Twitter page pulled up on our screen share. And we could do that real quick.
Actually, it's not letting me put it up there.
Oh, okay. Here, I'll try again.
Hang on. There we go.
So here he goes. Trumpism has divided Americans. Now it's attempting to divide Canadians. We won't let that happen. Foreign money and actors from the U.S. cannot be allowed to sow division in Canada. Shut down interference in foreign financing of the Freedom Convoy. So we all know that there's been lots of activist groups in Canada who have been paid protesters in the past, internationally paid protesters, especially those that want to participate in eco-terrorism and stuff like that. So foreign financing is a big deal when it's something you don't like, but when you do like it, just ignore it, sweep it under the rug.
Hey, Brendan, I believe there was a news conference with Ottawa Police today. Would you mind checking to see if you can find a link to that?
Sure.
And I'm going to try to pull up a clip here of an international leader who is calling Trudeau a tyrant, to further illustrate how Canada and Trudeau have lost respect on the international stage. And this whole foreign financing of the Freedom Convoy, it's bunk. Just another red herring.
Yeah, I think
so. This is a member of the European Parliament, Romanian Christian Terres. And this is what he has to say about Justin Trudeau.
And with the Prime Minister of Canada, the way he's behaving right now, he's exactly like a tyrant, like a dictator. He's like Ceausescu in Romania. If even you doubt, if you raise doubts about the vaccine, you're outcasted. What's the difference between what he does and what happened under the Inquisition? See, on one side they say, well, we should not believe in God, but on the other side they say, believe in science. We don't have to. Science is not about belief. Science is about measurements, conclusions, hypotheses, and arguments. We got to a point right now where even if you say something, if you raise any doubts, you're already considered, as whatever, they label you in very different way. This is not okay. And I have to tell you, that when I saw the protest in Canada, the way the trucks reacted, I got in touch with some of them, others contacted me. I congratulated them, and I want to use this opportunity to thank them. And I hope this movement for freedom and for rights is spreading all around the world. Because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that all these elected officials, they understand that they were elected in those offices to work for the people, not to behave like masters of slaves. Thank you. And with the Prime Minister of Canada, the way he's behaving right now.
So, yeah, I mean,
I liked his point there about the science because it really pisses me off when there's like they uphold science as some sort of virtuous religion, and now we have, in a lot of senses, some sort of dogma around scientific works and stuff like that. Like, science is forever evolving and it's forever asking questions. It's not a religion. The state wants it to be a religion, and the state also wants to be a part of that religion, but it's absolute bunk. Just like you said before, like when they say follow the science, and then they could declare if you have questions about something, oh, you are not following the science. Look at this guy. He does not follow the science. It's a 21st century equivalent to say, look, she's a witch. Burn her.
And as you can clearly see, Trudeau has lost even more respect on the international stage. Other politicians, other countries, they're not taking him seriously as a good leader. They see him now as a tyrant, which is what he is. That's what he has become. That's, I think, truly what he has always been. He's just really showing his true colors now. I never realized he would be this bad. I wasn't happy when he got elected, but didn't think that we would ever have to deal with anything like this. These are the darkest days in Canadian history. We're witnessing them right now. The country, as I've said, is gone. We've lost Canada. The country no longer exists because we no longer have our freedom. It's no longer a free country.
So there was not. I checked CPAC and all of our regular sources. I don't see
So,
a
sources
press
not
conference, but what I did find is one that isn't in video. So the media team at Ottawa Police did release a statement today, and we can at least go over it.
Sure. So here's an update on where the cops are at with everything they're doing, with over 100 roadblocks, checkpoints set up around the city, right?
Mm-hmm. So it says, for immediate release, Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, 3 p.m., the Ottawa Police Service and its policing partners continue operations to return downtown core to a state of normalcy. Sparks Street is now accessible to pedestrians via gated access at all intersections except Elgin Street. Secured area reduced. Police are reducing the size of the secured area. It now includes Laurier Avenue to Parliament Hill, Bronson Avenue to Rideau Canal. Police measures will only remain in place as long as is deemed necessary to ensure unlawful protesters do not return. So, still, it is Eastern Berlin in the old USSR days in Ottawa.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. I mean, it really is we're under a state of martial law. That's what we are facing tonight, and Ottawa is the epicenter of that. And a lot of bizarre stuff went on down there today. There was a heavy police presence at one point in the downtown area where people were told a couple of different things. In one case, they were told there was a bank robbery at a Scotiabank outlet, and then that turned into some sort of an active shooter in a window, is what people were told. That's why apparently there was supposed to be a lot of police in the downtown, and it just isn't clear what any of that might have been. And I don't think there is anything in the media release about that. Is there, Brendan, that you saw? So nothing
No.
from Ottawa Police about any of it, but we did.
On their Twitter, yes.
Yeah.
Right,
So
let
let's
me
find
bring
out what
it
they
up.
were saying about it. But it was a very strange situation down there today. And I don't think if you were going to rob a bank, you would run into the, most heavily policed area of the country that's under heavy lockdown and go in there and rob a bank. You'd have to be a complete moron.
So 6 hours ago, like 1 o'clock, 1:30, one person is in custody. The police operation is ongoing. Then 4 hours ago, they said the police operation is now over, but the investigation is ongoing. And here's the statement we already read. And there was a fatal collision down there. But I did see a different source on some of it.
So I don't know. Maybe we'll find out eventually what it was all about, but I don't think we have any clear picture.
I don't really want to share what is known so far because it's all speculation from people who are not accredited to talk about it. But there was a heavy police presence down there. They did talk about, I believe, at the Rideau Mall, that something was going on at the Rideau Mall. It could have been somebody with a gun or something. Nobody knows. They're not talking about it clearly, and it's also not on the Ottawa Police website. But I did see the mall, the road by the mall that had all of the trucks lined up across it. So I mean, I think we should probably wait before we give a discussion on that story.
Yeah,
till
we
more of it
just
comes
don't
out.
know. I heard a lot of stuff coming out from down there, and
Yes.
through the day, none of it seemed to make any sense. Especially because if you have an active shooter, you normally would clear the public out, but people were still milling around on the street out there. It made no sense to me at all. So I don't know what was really going on, but it was bizarre, and it just kind of goes with everything else going on right now, I guess.
Yep. Strange times. Strange
So
times.
yeah, we were trying to get some video out of there, but with the lockdowns, it's hard to even get anybody in there right now. So we just don't know. But when we find out, we'll let you know, and we're still monitoring all of that.
So I understand that the Department of National Defense was flooded with calls over the weekend demanding Canadian forces protect Ottawa protesters from the police.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Would never happen, but interesting.
You know, the other thing I saw, and I wish I'd queued up a link or something, but you know, I saw it today, just sort of a public relations feel good post from the OPP, Ontario Provincial Police, about cops going out on like a safety patrol for snowmobilers. And then I clicked on the comments, and every comment surrounding that was negative and talking about the cops beating protesters in Ottawa. Every single one. They've done so much damage to the public relationship between policing and the citizens. I don't know if they'll ever recover. People don't trust the cops anymore. A lot of people are afraid of them, me included. And that's coming from a guy who had nothing but the utmost respect for cops all my life. But what I've seen and what I see going on right now, even in the aftermath of that, and the rhetoric and the media crap swirling around all of that, and the way the cops are patting themselves on the back, and the way Doug Ford came out today and congratulated the cops and thanked them, and all these politicians stepping up, and even conservative politicians who stood up in Parliament last night and said thank you to the cops for taking care of the protesters the way they did. Yeah, with batons and tear gas and LRAD, long-range acoustic device, sonic sound waves to blow out people's eardrums. No, man, I'm telling you, people saw what happened down there, and you can't unsee that. You can't unsee that. Trampling people with horses, no. It's going to take a long time, if ever, to heal those wounds.
So how bad was it? Was it like Justin Trudeau's social media page comment bad, or was it worse than
Oh,
that?
it was things like, yeah, you're out there keeping people safe. Are you going to be beating the snowmobilers? Stuff like that. I mean, again, I'm not. You can find it online yourselves, folks. I mean, I'm between that, and it's just normally that stuff. There was one comment on there that I saw where somebody said, "Thank you, officers, for keeping us safe." Something like that. Every other one was making reference to the beatings in Ottawa. Good job, guys. That's how you handle a protest, a peaceful protest, a protest where stores were not looted, they were supported. Restaurants weren't burned to the ground, they were solicited, and people went in to buy the food and took business to restaurateurs who have been suffering for over 2 years because of COVID lockdowns. They've been helping them out. Oh no, let's punish those people and put the business owner out of business because he served racist truckers. It's ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. And now you've gone and damaged your reputation and your relationship with the public to the point where you might not ever be able to repair it. You know, I see that what's kind of happened is older police officers, good cops who understood community policing, most of those guys are out, and they have a new crop in there, and the whole attitude, the philosophy is different. And it's not good. Not good at all.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Victor says, strike, take all your money from banks. It's the worst threat against the perverted Trudeau. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something about dogs there. You know, they were even taking people's dogs away and saying they were going to euthanize them. And I'd like to find out how many dogs they put down, if any, because they were threatening to take the truckers' dogs away if they had pets with them, and then euthanize them.
Well, actually, they were going to give them to the Humane Society,
Where they would be euthanized
if they were not claimed after 7 days and they deem them not readoptable. Let's see if they have any updates for us. Probably not. I highly doubt they'd want to make a press release saying, "Oh, we've killed X amount of dogs."
Yeah, they're not going to tell you that they killed the truckers' dogs. They said they were going to do it, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do.
They don't care.
They don't make idle threats. They follow through on them, as we're seeing. They don't just want justice. They want to crush people. And that's why tonight we do have political prisoners in custody, denied bail. And it's not just Tamara Lynch. I think there are other ones in there too, right? Still being denied bail. Lots of
Pat King is in jail till Friday. It's looking like he'll get a $50,000 bail.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. I don't know what his outcome is going to be. Things seem to be cooking up on this Ukraine front thing, and I know that there was a press conference this afternoon. I'm not sure. Maybe we should delve into that one, as it's going to be
very concerning.
It's going to be our next big thing, I think. It's going to definitely be something that they're going to try to distract us with. So I think probably now is as good a time as any to start learning about it.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about it. And my view on it is that we should probably stay the heck out of there. And I think in this case, I'm not so sure that the U.S. and Canada have the moral high ground on this one. And I'm saddened to see that they're sending our young men and women over there to put them in harm's way over something that I think could be resolved without violence. The problem, in my view, is that the West, the United States, NATO, they want to make Ukraine part of NATO, and that would park an adversary right on Russia's doorstep. And it's not, from the Russian perspective, that's not really unlike the scenario that the United States faced with the Cuban Missile Crisis. They don't want NATO, a NATO country, right on their doorstep, weaponized, and pointing weapons directly at them that close. And that, in a nutshell, is, I think, honestly what's really going on over there.
And also, NATO, by design, was made to combat the Russians. So I can see why the Russians would be worried about that. You know, I'm kind of on the fence about it because from the materials that I've seen, Ukrainian people don't want to be invaded by Russia. And are we going to end up with a situation like World War II where we give Russia Ukraine and say, okay, just don't do it again, and then they do it again? Because remember, they took, in 2014, they took, what the heck was it called? Crimea. They took Crimea in 2014, and now after another Winter Olympics, they are going after Ukraine. I do have the press conference lined up if you want to play that.
Sure.
Freeland and Minister Joly and Arnaud. We are here to speak about the unacceptable act.
Le Canada condamne la reconnaissance par le président Poutine de Donetsk et Luhansk comme territoire indépendant. Canada strongly condemns President Putin's recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk as so-called independent.
Whoa.
Was inaccurate and contained dangerous misinformation. Russia's brazen provocations are a threat to security and peace in the world. I've been in constant contact with President Zelensky and our partners and allies since this crisis began. Last Friday, I had a call with President Biden, Prime Minister Johnson, President Macron, Chancellor Scholz, and other European leaders about the situation. And yesterday, I spoke again with President von der Leyen of the European Commission. We are united and steadfast in our support of Ukraine and have made clear that Russian aggression will result in severe consequences. So today, in coordination with allies and like-minded partners, Canada is announcing a first round of economic sanctions. We will ban Canadians from all financial dealings with...
I'm so sorry, but this just mirrors Chrystia Freeland like super distracting.
Oh yeah, there's something wrong there. No question about it. We keep seeing it in news conference after news conference.
Yeah, sorry, I had to point it out.
Independent states of Luhansk and Donetsk. We will sanction members of the Russian parliament who voted for the illegal decision to recognize these so-called republics. We will ban Canadians from engaging in purchases of Russian sovereign debt. And we will apply additional sanctions on 2 state-backed Russian banks and prevent any financial dealings with them. These sanctions are a major step and target those responsible for violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. And they will remain in place until the territorial integrity of Ukraine is restored. Aujourd'hui, en coordination avec nos alliés et partenaires, le Canada annonce l'imposition d'une première série de sanctions économiques. On va interdire aux Canadiens de faire toute transaction financière avec les territoires indépendants, soi-disant, de Luhansk et de Donetsk. On va imposer des sanctions aux membres du Parlement russe qui ont voté et vont rester en place jusqu'à ce que l'intégrité to reinforce our commitment to NATO and promote peace and security in Europe. We're also stepping up our support for NATO. Canada has pledged significant additional medical, aircraft, naval, and land capabilities to the NATO response force. This is something that NATO requested from members and will bolster our support of partners and allies. Minister Anand will provide more details in a moment. À tous les membres des Forces armées canadiennes en Lettonie, merci.
I think that's enough, Brendan.
You can reach out to global affairs.
That's enough for tonight.
So, what you think?
Well, just what I said. I think that it's unwise to escalate this conflict over there. I wish Canada would stay, pretty much stay out of it. And
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did you support the war in Iraq?
At the time, no, not exactly. Afghanistan, yes. I was unsure about Iraq, but felt very uncomfortable with it because wasn't sure about the information coming out of there. And back then, when I was still working at CTV, I don't think my eyes were as wide open to government misinformation, which is a word that Trudeau likes to throw around a lot and people on the left. But I was not as clued in. And I was having more difficulty separating fact from fabrication back in those days.
I'm sorry. The reason I asked is I'm noticing that there's a lot of people who are pro Iraq war and Afghanistan war are now saying, no, we don't want this. This is not what you want. Like, let's not do this. This is a bad idea. We can't do this. It's just kind of an interesting comparison. I think there's something to do about how the pendulum has swung on this. That we know this is a bad idea. This is probably the stupidest idea that's been talked about in the past 5 years. And there's been a lot of stupid things that's happened. Canada's military has always been something, it's always been used as a tool by powers much bigger than itself. It has no means of basically going into and maintaining a war on its own. It's always kept its military barely funded. It could barely find people to work for it. Like, we're not in a position to do this. I'm not prepared to see kids die for this. And as far as I'm concerned, too, if Vladimir Putin wants it, he can have it. Like, it sounds like to me like
you know what,
Ukraine
Brent? I don't think Vladimir Putin does want it. I think he just doesn't want NATO and the United States sitting on his front doorstep. And I think what's really going on over there is if the U.S. would back off and just let Ukraine be Ukraine on its own and almost work as a buffer state,
Yep.
the Russians would back off. I don't think Putin wants to go in there because I don't think he wants the headache.
Yep.
He would, he would rather, but if the U.S. keeps pushing, I think his ultimate goal, honestly, is really just to more or less destroy the country, and will move in if he has to in order to keep the U.S. from going in and NATO nations. He just doesn't want them on his front doorstep. So and there's so much at risk over there that this could spark, honestly, a world war.
Yeah.
A nuclear conflict. You're not messing with some smaller country. And
Yeah,
I think the United States,
you're not dealing with like a Bedouin tribe here. You're not dealing with
an Iraq. You're not dealing with some country that's been propped up by either the Russians or the Americans or whatever, right? You're not dealing with Syria. You're not dealing with Iran. You're dealing with a serious nuclear power that we were engaged in a Cold War with when it was the former Soviet Union for a long, 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 long time. And this is another world power, another world nuclear power. I don't think we want to go down this road. This puts the entire world at risk. And I don't think there's any need for it. There are other ways to deal with this. I think it's just a failure of international policy. And I don't think the Biden administration, and I certainly don't think the Trudeau regime is reading this situation properly at all. But Trudeau will go along with whatever the U.S. does because he doesn't really have much choice anyway. Well, I mean, he does. He could just say no, but he won't because he's in Biden's back pocket anyway.
Yeah, he is. Now, there's a couple of important things about what's happening in Ukraine that I think people deserve to know about. That, number one, they were just talking about our commitment to NATO is very strong. Well, Ukraine is not a NATO country. It has had, 30 years to determine if it wanted to be a NATO country, and now it's like, well, maybe it might be a good idea. It's like, come on, give me a break. Give me a break.
We're kind of teeing this story up, and we can talk about it more another night, but we should probably dip out of this and get back to the main topic at hand tonight, which is this truckers' protest, which is now, I guess, broken up, possibly being resurrected as some sort of a strike. It's hard to say if it's going to reform or whatever. It's going through legal channels now, right? So that's kind of where we're at tonight with it all.
Oh, it is big time. It's going to be something that it's a wait and see game. Like, there's I think this freedom movement is bigger now than it ever was before. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. You hit one and then two more come up, right? Like, who knows what it's going to do next. It's taken on a life of its own now. And just like that picture we just showed everybody of Jagmeet Singh's office and the little protests that they had out there, I think that they're not going to be able to squash this. They could keep trying. But Rex Murphy used the best analogy for it. He's basically trying to kill like an insect with a hammer, and it's just not going to work out for him.
You mean a sledgehammer?
Yeah. It's just not going to work out for him.
So in Windsor, I'm not sure what the situation is here on Church Road. I know that the cops there had been blocking things off a lot and creating other traffic headaches themselves since clearing out the protest there. In Ottawa, you have over 100 roadblocks set up, and it's very difficult for anybody to get in or out of the downtown area and get into Parliament Hill. Seeing if we can I'm seeing if anyone has sent us any live streams out of Ottawa tonight. Anyone at all. We're trying to get a feed. I'm just checking our sources again. Hang on.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything come out.
No, and I know that a lot of journalists have been having trouble just getting past the checkpoints. I spoke to a couple of people down there today. They couldn't get in where they wanted to go. And I do know that the cops are out there using these new powers to quite literally hunt down the truckers who have left. And they're pursuing these guys even after they've left. And I think that they want to make examples of them all, right?
Well, there's the traffic map. I don't think anybody who was against the trucker movement quite figured that this was going to be like this, because we did share a video of an individual who was walking through the red zone, so to speak, and they had a camera in their hand, and the officer quite blatantly threw the camera to the ground and was very rude and was like, "What's your business here?" The citizen just wanted to go and get a coffee, and they were told, "You can't be in here. Do you live here?" They said, "No, get out."
Yeah, I know that lady now has a lawyer, and the officers involved in that are going to be sued. They're going to be taking legal action against them because a professional misconduct complaint is being levied against them. In fact, I think I have a link to that. Let me just see if I can pull that up.
The courts in Ottawa are going to be stuffed, packed full for years and years and years and years. They won't ever be able to get through it. Not in a timely manner anyway.
Yeah, that video's been removed. So the lawyer's name is David Anber. He's representing that lady whose name is Doreen. I'm not sure of her last name. I can't recall. But yeah, they're definitely going to take some sort of action. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of litigation.
It's going to be years in the making. And then who knows, maybe somebody has like a long-term injury from getting a rifle butt to the brain. Like, these are things that could have long-term consequences. And I mean, if you think COVID's bad, some of these injuries that you can get from some of the equipment that the police were using and techniques that the police were using on people, like these aren't things that just quickly go away.
Yeah.
Now,
And, we've seen that Rebel News reporter, right? She was assaulted, shot point blank with apparently a tear gas canister. It injured her, and they're taking legal action. So, yes, the cops and the government are targeting and charging people and arresting people at gunpoint. But on the flip side of that, there's going to be there are lawsuits pending, and in that way, there's going to be some accountability on the police and government side. And we'll have to see how all that plays out. But it's a terrible situation. It never had to come to this. All that had to happen was Trudeau just had to talk to the people. Just talk to the people. And he refused. It's just not right, man.
I checked the private box.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how long this is going to take with the litigation. If that same judge who was looking at Tamara Litch's bail, then it could be a sorry excuse. So it could come down to whether or not it's going to be by jury or if it's going to be determined by the judge.
I'm just checking on a couple of other things here, Brendan, so just give me a moment. I'm going to see if I can find a couple of updates here before we move on. So what's your prediction then on this strike as we just take a last look at that aspect of it? Do you see anything more happening over the next day or two? Do you see any traction there?
No, I really couldn't say that I think that. Here's the problem with this whole strike proposal. There's not really any way to measure it. So it's so hard to get like your grips on what is correct with it and what is not correct with it. And then you have to also think of the equation. What percentage of workers in the workforce would need to take time off in order for it to be effective? Is it 5% of the workforce? Like 5% of Canada is a lot of people, mind you. But how much of that is comparable? And how much of the workforce takes off work every day? These are questions I simply don't know the answer to. And it honestly prevents me from being able to gauge how much traction it's going to get. I have not seen in my social media travels over the few days any info about it. That is subjective, though. It is not objective, so it's hard for me to say. So I just don't know how much of Canada would it take for it to be effective, and secondly, is it feasible? Are enough people going to do it?
Yeah, the other issue, I mean, I think their efforts to publicize it, get the message out, it's being suppressed. And they're relying on social media, and I just don't think it's getting distributed effectively. So if it happens, I think it's going to take more time. That being said, I don't think this thing is dead. I don't think this movement is dead.
No, this movement is far from dead. This is only the beginning. The struggle here that we're going through is the part of it. people are going to want their lives back to normal, and people are going to want to be left alone. Like they don't want to deal with this anymore.
There is an aspect to this that I almost hesitate to discuss, but I'm worried about what's going to happen in even, the medium term here.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I think the government is lucky that they've been dealing with reasonable people, peaceful people who were just there trying to express themselves. I think, though, that this is a huge risk that Justin Trudeau is taking, because he's taking hardworking, middle-class people who are not professional protesters. They went out there to express displeasure with government policy because they were feeling desperate, because they'd been backed into a corner already. Some of them were losing their houses because they weren't able to work because of his mandates. The economy is in bad shape already. And now what's his reaction been? He's crushing them, taking away everything they have, destroying their lives. My concern is this, and maybe we can get some comments from people who are watching here tonight and share with us. When you do that to somebody, and when you do that to some people, what do you think the reaction is going to be? People, when they have nothing left to lose, get very, very desperate. Do you think that puts us in a dangerous situation, Brendan?
Well, the expression goes, when push comes to shove, right? So the government's going to keep pushing. How hard is the population going to shove? We certainly know lots of people's opinions on it that want to certainly shove back really hard, but you've already said it, man. They've got all the guns, they've got all the tech, they got just about everything. I mean, you can do what you want. Well, I mean, no. This needs to stay peaceful, like straight up. And I think any effort to make a violent shove back at the government is only going to lead to vilification and destruction of the movement. The movement will collapse entirely if something like that happens.
Yeah, I'm just very, very worried about it, because it only takes one crazy person to do something crazy, because they've gone crazy because the government drove them crazy.
Yeah. And well, we've seen that before too, right? So
yeah.
That's kind of been the story of crazy people for a long time now.
So that's where we're at. With that being said, freedomreporters.com is where you can donate to us. We're going to wrap things up here for the evening, and we'll have a lot more to share with you tomorrow night. Today was, I guess, just a transitional day, because things are moving into a new phase with all of this. And we're going to be keeping a very close eye on what goes on with the Senate now. And we're going to be following these legal battles. And I think we're going to be seeing more action on the protest front in the days ahead as well. So we'll certainly be keeping you updated with that, and we'll get out into the field and get you some reports from different locations. And we have also reached out to James Topp, who's a veteran who is marching across Canada from Vancouver to Ottawa. And we're trying to arrange an interview with him. So we'll hopefully bring that to you. He's marching across Canada to, again, protest these medical mandates in his own way, conducting his own sort of convoy, but he's doing it on foot. And we'll have more to share with you on that front as well. But if you'd like to support our journalism, we are fighting the information war against the mainstream legacy media in our own way, practicing new journalism. And you can do that at freedomreporters.com, or click the link in the YouTube description or on Facebook. And we'd greatly appreciate it. We can't do this alone, and we do want to expand what we're doing and bring you more alternative journalism, independent journalism. Any final thoughts, Brendan?
Well, it's been a crazy ride. I can't wait to see how this is going to go, and following this further is definitely a challenge, and I really can't wait to see where it's going to go, man. This is way more than I've ever would have thought I'd ever seen in my whole life. Like, who was expecting this? It's like, I wasn't, like, that's for sure. But in the meantime, my name is Brendan Kennedy, and I am the co-host here at Maverick News, and it's great to see you. Have a good night.
And I'm Rick Walker, also with Maverick Multimedia and Maverick News. And we will be back tomorrow night with a whole new broadcast as our coverage of the Freedom Convoy 2022 continues, and as we make efforts to expand our coverage through this new form of journalism. And we will catch you all tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, on the flip side. Thank you very much. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Have a good night.